bold hearts at fair liberty's call. No tyrannous act shall suppress your just claim, for staying with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady. Not as slaves, but as freemen, our money will give.
July 4th, 2017. Before the sun has even crested the horizon. Sometimes I do my best work at this hour. I don't want to get too historical. I don't want to get too schmaltzy about, founding fathers and this and that and the history. But there's a point in this short message that I'm going to give you today. This is not going to be a podcast. This is going to be a very short message about the signing of celebrating the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And the idea that on this date, we came to be. On paper we came to be. It became known to the British, hey, this is us. We're no longer under the crown. You can do with that what you will. And they did just what they will. They sent 30,000 troops to Manhattan on the back of our signing of the Declaration of Independence. So they did just what they have done historically, right? They brought an overwhelming force by Navy. We had no Navy to answer the call. The American Revolution is one of the greatest stories ever, but whether you decide to get in that and to get into that is up to you, really. That's really on you. It's up to you. If you like history, you cannot not fall in love with the story of the American Revolution. And it's one of the great stories of all time. Whether or not people try to go back in history and discredit, that's all we are in right now, is a discrediting period, right? Well, what you don't know is... And then they tell you a bunch of things about the character and the quality of men from that era. As if we expect them to be, men who understand modern day principles. They were barbaric. In some senses. And in other senses, they were much more kept than us. Etiquette. One of the first books that George Washington ever rewrote, which I guess was a popular thing, right? You picked a book and you rewrote it. That's how you worked on your handwriting. Was a giant book on etiquette. Right? This massive book on etiquette. But I want to talk to you guys about George, because he was a monster. He was a superhero. He really was, by all accounts. He was a great example of a great person. Not to say that great people don't do horrible things, and I'm sure there were terrible things done by George Washington at some point in his life. Because we all make mistakes, and we all do bad things, and we all make bad choices. It's part of this thing called life. No one has been under the pressure that guy was under. Let's be honest and go with that to start, right? Can you imagine having an entire nation looking at you? Imagine having an entire nation looking at you. Some of them spitting at you. And in the darkness, right? In the dark alleyways, people saying that you're going to fail. And you knowing that you have to win, no matter what. And you have this ragtag army who basically hates each other, right? They're running away. They're every time a battle breaks out, they're running from the gunfire once things get ugly because they're untrained. They don't know what they're doing. It's not a pretty sight for George. And apparently George Washington was a guy who had an anger problem. He was a guy who had an anger problem, but you know what? He also had the willpower of a maniac. And he kept his anger under wraps most of the time. But what was most impressive about the guy, right? From my standpoint, was not the fact that he duped the greatest army in the world over and over again. Though he may not have won in the early battles, he definitely kept them on their toes. Right? There were more than one occasion where the British said that they were, a day away from just stomping out this little brush fire that was the rebellion. And George outsmarted them. Right? Whether he one time he ferried a whole army across the Hudson River overnight while leaving campfires burning to get them to safety before dawn broke, only for the British to find out that this army, this little ragtag army they thought who was backed into a corner against the river, had disappeared. Right? They woke up and they thought they were going to wake up and stroll down this hill and shoot all these men and stab them and kill them all, and that would be the end of the rebellion. But he ferried each and every guy across that river, and of course legend has it that the last boat left just in the nick of time and George Washington was on that boat. Now you can believe that or not. That can be a little bit of folk history, but I will tell you this, I've also read stories about corporals giving orders to soldiers of the revolutionary troops about moving logs out of the way of a road. And when the troops told the corporal they needed his help because the log was too heavy, he told them he was a corporal, he just gives orders. At which point, Washington, who they didn't know was around at the time, hopped off his horse and ran over to help move the log. Right? This is the commander-in-chief now. This is the general of it all. And he made a very quick point to that young corporal by acting, right? By acting. And it was this kind of leadership and this kind of humility that made the man great. We're talking about times where, their battles might include fierce hand-to-hand combat with bayonets and swords and daggers and whatever they could do. There were volleys of fire, but it was primarily battles in the pit, hand-to-hand combat. You know what I mean? So, what's the message today? 2017, right? Almost 250 years. What is the message today? We look at our president. I don't want to talk about him much. We look at our president. We look at our last few presidents. Leaders, people in the world who are in high positions. Look at yourself as well. And understand the importance in the humble American. In the American with humility. We all know where we're being wronged. We all know where we're being beaten. We all know where we are weak. But I challenge you to remain humble and to have humility in the face of your greatest enemy. This is a big deal. This also comes from the fact that obviously George Washington was incredibly staunch and devout in his Christianity. Right? There's no doubt about that. He's got a prayer that is almost a page long that he said each and every morning. But that humility and being humble in that way to everyone, right? He was even humble to the men who came and asked him for his surrender. After the first battle, where his men were basically cut down decisively, they sent peacekeepers out to talk to George Washington, and he was very humble. I think he even gave the General Howe, congratulations on the win. And then just, without anger, without any real emotion whatsoever, slipped out of the conversation and said, look, there's a battle to be won, and we're still fighting. That type of thing. Never out of pocket, never out of character, just being a good, humble man. And you got to understand the importance of that, because we're surrounded by the opposite, right? In the movies, you see the guy who's mean and he tells people, I tell people like it is. And, They don't take no shit, and somebody gets on their nerves and they beat them up. And the tough guy, right? The radical tough guy. The guy that everybody thinks they want to be. I don't want to be like that guy, man. I just want to knock people out when they get on my nerves. But the real warrior, and the person who really makes the world go round, and the person who makes America great, is not the guy up there with the coiffed hair who came up with Make America Great Again. It's not the guy who spends all his time on Twitter. It's not the guy who's on social media pouring out his heart, taking off, just bearing your soul completely and losing control over an article or over a comment or over this or over that. No. The guy who is most impressive, right? The person who can get the most done. And that's what we're looking to do, right? We're looking to get things done in this nation, aren't we? Aren't we looking for solutions? Aren't we looking for ways to make this country better and to get through some of these hardships that we're dealing with? The people who will get that done will be the humble. They will be the people who can work with other people despite their differences. They will be the people who can see their goal and work to achieve it despite anything. They won't be the people who lose their temper. They won't be the people who say mean things. They won't be people who do anything for a laugh. They won't be the people who do anything for the attention of the opposite sex. They will be people who have strong morality. People who can put themselves last instead of first when it counts. People who will do anything to achieve the goal at hand. People who will look at each other as equals honestly. Right? I will help you no matter what. Not people who say that they're for equality via tweets and via Facebook and via YouTube channel. But people who will actually get down in the mud knee deep and help you out. Right? No matter what. No matter what they look like, no matter what you look like, no matter what they believe, no matter what you believe. Those are the true heroes. Those are the true heroes. They're all around you too, by the way. They don't make TV. You see, that's the problem in America. The George Washingtons of today, they don't sell ads very well. They don't make good television shows. They don't drink themselves into a stupor and scream at their spouse. They don't sell well in today's America. The Washingtons of today don't sell well. And they're out there. And they've probably helped you before. And I want you to be just like them. I want you to be just like them. I want you to get your control, get control over your emotions. Get control over your message. And remember that you're here to help people. Above all. And if you're really into equality, if you're really into a world where all are equal and everything is kosher, or as best as we can make it, then the first step in that is helping everyone. Helping anyone at any moment. That's the message. As we move into an America that is so conceited and so self-absorbed in 2017, take the actions, which is the most important, right? Take the actions of George Washington, the humility, and try to transfer that onto your person. Transfer that onto yourself. And become an example for these people who are growing up where they believe that they are the most important thing, where they believe that their actions are the most important, their message is the most important, where they believe that their college degree allows them not to do any heavy lifting. Because at the end of the day, the heavy lifting has to get done by someone. And the leader who is most willing to get in the trenches is always the guy who's going to get the most respect. It's very simple. Man, what a great day it'll be, huh? And just remember this. We get to celebrate today. We get to party. We get to have fun. We get to watch fireworks. In 1776, it was the opposite. The British had taken Staten Island, about 15,000 of them. They raped every woman they saw. This is written down in journals. They said something to the fact that a woman can't even go into the bush to pick a few berries or to forage some food without being ravished. There were another 15,000 men and ships right outside of Manhattan. The signing of the Declaration of Independence brought on so much more trouble than most Americans wanted. But there was a small contingency that knew it was necessary. They could see into the future and understand that this hardship would transfer into something. So just remember that. It wasn't sign the Declaration, July 4th, 1776, we all throw a party. No, half the country was mad about it. The British were raising all sorts of hell. And it was not a fun time. It was not a fun time at all. And that's what we should remember on a day like this. Right? George Washington had his back to the wall. He lost tremendous amounts. It was an ugly time. But then we battled back. We battled back to beat the greatest army in history. Period. And when we went on to be the greatest nation of all time. And live happily ever after. The end.
Come join hand in hand, brave Americans all, and rouse your bold hearts at fair liberty's call. No tyrannous act shall suppress your just claim, or stain with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady. Not as slaves, but as freemen our money will give. Our worthy forefathers, let's give them a cheer. Through climates unknown did courageously steer. Through oceans, through deserts, for freedom they came. And dying bequeathed us their freedom and fame. In freedom we're born, and